Let's speed this up a little bit. Moving today, and I hit my head on a lantern off the side of the house, new house. Still like how Ian's face is like
What's wrong with my face?
on the original countdown.
Yeah, that's not me. I don't know who that is.
And just like that, the real Migos are back. Kevin, what's up, man? Thanks for chiming in. Kevin, the night, mullet man, welcome back.
Thanks, brother. Glad to be back.
We're glad to have you. How's the mullet? Are we still intact?
It is ridiculous, actually, right now.
Nice.
Ridiculously great.
It's curly because the humidity, and then it's time for a trim next week. So.
Nice, man. Well, welcome back. Sorry for the extra echo on my mic here. New office. I'm working on the acoustics, so we'll have that done. But major announcement as we get in this right now, right off the hop. Friday at noon, we're doing a special Real Amigos, and guess who's joining us? The Uneducated Economist. If you have not seen the Uneducated Economist channel, he's nuts. Go over, check out his channel, the Uneducated Economist. He's talked about a lot of amazing things. He's going to come on and talk with us about what's happening in the market, what he's seeing, the stock market. He's pretty interesting dude. So check out the Uneducated Economist live noon central. We are going to be doing a live stream with Uneducated Economist. All right, let's get going. Kevin, the question. Sure. We're not even going to say hi to Ian yet because we're not. Yeah. Just kidding. What's up, Ian? His teeth, man. Look at him.
It's just the camera.
It's just a camera. Is it a filter?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's a filter.
No way.
It's that medical tourism, guys.
That medical tourism.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ian was out last week.
Dang.
OG Migo.
Crispy.
Yeah, looking good. Well, cool. So I want to talk. Ian and I were chatting on the phone yesterday, and we're talking about what's happening in the market, what we're seeing in the market, just having a conversation. And we're hearing some things from clients and from people that were considering buying in the Austin area. Obviously, if we looked, the market has definitely changed in the last 6 months. I think when we initially, like back in January, February, we were shocked that there was only 1,800 homes in the market. Now there's just about 9,000, which is huge. Kevin, what are you seeing in the market? And then, I want to hear from you what we're seeing in the market. And I want to talk about, is Austin overvalued?
I mean, yeah. I mean, obviously, like you said, there's a a lot of houses coming onto the market. It's weird to me because like, the buyers that I'm working with right now are all looking for specific things, and as many homes as there are on the market, I can't seem to find, what they're looking for. And the stuff that I do find for them has multiple offers still. So, like we looked at houses with a client. Her previous real estate agent didn't do anything for her. I helped her son buy a house. He's like, "Hey, help my mom." She called me. She's like, "Will you help me out?" We looked at a lot of houses. Like today will be my fifth day looking at houses with her, fifth day straight. And we just keep looking at stuff. It's just not good, So I see a lot of people just throwing their houses on the market. I think a lot of sellers feared missing out on the boom, and you see a little tick down and they're like, "Oh man, we got to get our house on the market really fast." And so you see a lot of this inventory is kind of like garbage, to be honest with you. So that's what I'm seeing, but from generally speaking, yeah, it's slower. Like, I'm not going to lie, my business has been a bit slower in the last month.
Well, I mean, I did a video back in March. The title "Sellers Were Sell Too Late." And it was all talking about the timing in the market. And I basically said in there, if you don't list before June, so in May, you're going to have problems this year. And sure enough, that's exactly what we're seeing. Ian, what else are you seeing?
Man, all sorts of things, like every direction. So I have buyers that had quit for the last year, maybe even 2 years. And I don't know if people know this, but we can see when you're looking at houses if you're looking at using our websites and such. And so I'm seeing them coming back looking. I'm like, that's interesting. People that did buy, and we'll talk about this a little more later, but I have people that are like, "Hey, we bought, we're ready to go. We're ready to get out of here. We're going to sell our house, buy something somewhere else." So that's a big one. And then I still have people that are waiting waiting for their new construction to be completed, where originally the thought was, a handful of months here, and we still don't have a definite date on completion. And it's been, in some cases, 8-9 months. And in two particular cases, 13, 14 months.
Well, this is something I talked about last week when, you weren't here because you were in Mexico. But what I've saw, and I did a short that I didn't put out yet, but basically what we saw is a lot of these builders, they would take contracts back 18 months ago, 16 months ago, and then they would start building those, but then they started building all the inventory homes. And so what they started doing is, instead of trying to get those homes completed since they had a contract on them, they started working on getting that inventory going. And this is where we ran into an issue. Remember the Bloomberg guy was like, "Well, hey, are you going to have an issue with inventory?" And all the builders are like, "No, we don't have any inventory." Well, now that inventory is ready. Those sellers or move up buyers, right? Their homes are now having to hit the market because they're finally able to close after 16 months. Their homes are sitting vacant. Did you know half the homes on the market are vacant right now? Out of the 8,900 homes on the market, half are vacant. Half of that is new construction. Half of that is just vacant homes. So you have a lot of homes sitting vacant or getting ready to sit vacant because the homeowner is now moving into the home that they purchased or just closed that with the new build. Yet that inventory is now fighting against the new build inventory. And had they just built the homes they had under contract instead of trying to get greedy, those homeowners, like that, I mean, think about it, a third of our inventory, I'll do the math, but like almost a third of our inventory is new build. I think it's like like 1/4. That's a lot. That's like 2,500 homes.
It's so interesting you mentioned that. Last night I was showing some new buyers, and we were looking at houses, and the builders were actually competing with incentives substantially over these resale homes. And I'm sitting here thinking, I mean, depending on your perspective, which one would you choose, right? Like, you can get this brand new house, right? That the builder is almost done with. They're paying a lot of the closing costs. We can talk about that later, being how they're absorbed and everything, but they're offering so much in the way of incentives that you can almost get into the house for some ridiculous price, like a couple $1,000s.
So 2,500 of the homes of the almost 9,000 are, so there's 61 homes. 2,500 are new construction or new. It's a good
what
amount.
else is kind of interesting about that? Have you seen, so if you look at the number of active listings, there's actually more listings that have decreased in price than there are new. listings. That's kind of
Mhm.
interesting. Or either back on market, you start adding those numbers together and it dwarfs the number of new listings. So
Mhm.
that's another interesting stat to play with.
What do you got over there, Kevin?
Oh no, just yeah. I mean, I'm looking at some of the comments too, and how to strategize where we are right now. We talked about this actually. I think the first time we saw it was August of last year, right? So we saw this massive like uptick in all the prices and craziness, and then we saw this first little downtick right in August and September, November of last year, where people were like, "Oh, this is the end." And then that we all said, I remember all three of us were like, if you're going to buy, if you were thinking about buying, now is probably a really good time to buy. It's not as competitive. Prices are down just a little bit. Sellers are kind of starting to freak out. That was like a small version of that. And then, obviously the uptick happened again at the beginning of the year. And now we're back in that next lull, but it's before it pops back up again, right? Like the way all this works, it's hard to explain and it doesn't follow it exactly, but the reality is it follows in physics a mass spring damper curve, right? So like it pops up and it comes down and then over time will level out, right? But when you have momentum that goes up, depending on how much momentum is going up and how much momentum is coming back down again, determines how many times that we'll see this. And buyers and sellers kind of they act in a way in the economy to follow these curves pretty well. So we'll see another, like after this is over and the buyers have been sitting through interest rates stabilize, listings stabilize, buyers feel comfortable coming back into the market, then you're going to see yet another mini sellers market, right? They're going to be coming into all the good houses and try to put offers in on them, and then it's going to swing back down again until it normalizes. So I don't think it's over yet. That's why I always hesitant to be like to see like 1 or 2 months of trend and be like, oh, it's over, because it doesn't work like that.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of the thing too is if you think about it, we didn't have any inventory and there was like a FOMO for a long time, right? And now that buyers are slowing down, it's like you now have inventory, your interest rate's higher, you can shop. Like you just said, fifth day out showing clients homes.
Yeah.
That's insane. If you did that 6 months ago, you would just be wasting your time.
Totally.
So it's nice to have inventory. I just find it funny that people like you can't have both ways, right? You can't have low interest rates and low prices.
Mhm.
It's just not going to happen. And the right home or like right conditions. So you're not going to have one of those three things. And right now we don't have low interest rates. So I think it's good that buyers can be a little more choosy. I 100%. I like that. But at a certain point too, it's like if you're totally going to leave the market because you think it's going to crash. I mean, what do they say? Rent is 100% interest rate or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One thing I think is fun to talk about is I think we have a lot of sellers. Like you said, they had the FOMO. They're like, let's put it on the market. But sellers are going to be buyers somewhere, right? How many of these sellers have their homes on the market and are willing to take a ridiculous price cut because they've already committed to another home or they need to plan their relocation? I have multiple situations where I've recently gotten in offers and have saved tens of thousands of dollars, if not more than that, because the sellers are like, I'm desperate, I'm motivated, I got to go.
I saw one of my good friends is a listing agent for Redfin. She does a lot of business for them. And I've been noticing on her stories, she has a lot of, she shows her appointment schedule and she has like 3 to 6 listing appointments every single day, pretty much. But she also showed some numbers that she was giving to people, like where these numbers would have been a couple months ago and where they are today. And she's like, obviously I'm quoting in some cases a much, much lower value to list at than I would have a while back, which is of course telling. We knew that was going to do that. But then the weird thing to me, like when I'm trying to resolve some of this stuff is like I listed this house, this 1,600 square foot, 4-bedroom, 2-bath, very starter home, like apartment style, but with 4 bedrooms on a lot up in Tech Ridge. And I only posted it on Zillow Rentals. And in 2 weeks, with 0 showings, I had 200 inquiries. I had 30 unsolicited applications without even talking to people. And of those 30 applications, I'll bet, like at least like, I don't know, most of those applications were actually multiple people too, trying to find a place together, because individual 1-bedroom rents have gotten so out of control that now people have really no choice but to pool together and be like, because those rental rates, like we leased it for $2,200 a month. That's actually really cheap for a 4-bedroom house. But
Yeah,
that's what
and
I'm
in
saying.
Austin proper.
Yeah, in Austin proper. But that's what I'm saying is I think now we're seeing the first next wave of the people that like are really seriously saying, I can't buy a house right now. Like I just can't and won't buy a house right now. And then pulling back and doing, so we're going to see this next massive increase in single family rentals.
I just helped
rates.
this multi-generational, 3 generations move into a lease property. So I had this lease listing, and it was substantially more than that. And it wasn't in Austin proper, and it wasn't that large of a house. I mean, it was maybe 2,400 square feet, but it took 3 generations to be able to afford what the asking rent was for this.
Right. Right. Well, that's the thing is now that I'm thinking, I had 200 inquiries. I mean, I just talked to the people. I was like, usually I'm like, I'm more interested. I'll talk to them about their story and we'll go through and figure this out. Like this time I was just like, listen, I literally don't have the capacity to even know what's going on in your life right now. Like literally apply. The best qualified person is going to get the lease, and I will talk to no one else. So, these people were disappointed. That means that there essentially were like 29 applications of people just trying to get a house. There are so few options available to them right now. I probably could have asked $3,000 a month for that house, and probably got it. So, where do we go from here is the big question.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people, if it's not affordable to buy, that just means that there's more competition in the rental market, which means that you're going to spend more money on a property to rent it and pay somebody else's mortgage. Now, look, one of the comments here was about the property taxes. I think that's also a huge reason why people are throwing their homes on the market, is the property taxes. So, this is just unfortunate because it's something I've been talking about a long time with these property taxes and what they, what happens. But hey, so Ian, we were talking, you said you're having a lot of clients go back to California. Can you elaborate on that?
California is one place, but also other places outside of Texas. So, I got to be careful how deep we go with this conversation, and we've talked about this a few times, but I'll give an example. So one of my clients, they've decided that when you do the math based on the trends from what's happened over the last few years, looking at property taxes, looking at income tax, looking at all the things across the board, quality of life, schools, everything, job opportunities. In their mind, it made more sense to relocate from Austin back to California because California had everything just about everything that they wanted already. They only left because, Austin was super, super hot. And we've talked about this a lot, where I think I've even asked that exact question. If you could live anywhere and money wasn't a factor, where would that be? And so that person, California was the place, and they were only here because it made financial sense above all else. Today, it no longer made sense for them. Based on their job, based on their income and the ability to work from home. They were like, well, I'd rather be in California and pay the same amount.
Yeah.
And then traffic was irrelevant because, when you work remote, that's less of a factor. And so there was a lot to that one.
So I think there's a few things at play here why people are cooling on Austin. Number one, the work from home is slowing down. I think a lot of people aren't doing the work from home thing. I think a lot of people moved out here at once. And so you have a bullwhip effect, right? When everybody moves to one place real quick, you start to see the whip come back. And so I think we're seeing that as well. Somebody said in the live stream last week and we talked about a little bit about, the Roe versus Wade being overturned and that impact on Austin. We could talk about that if you want to talk about that, but, that was a concern for some people, I guess. So,
Well-
and it's hot. It's super hot right now. I think people find, like last year when people moved here, it was not as hot. It was nice. I mean, we only had a few days in the hundreds. Dude, what is it, like 15, 20 days in a row in the hundreds? It's crazy.
We also had a tornado last year. So this, and right now we're talking about our grid not even be able to make it again. And so, yesterday was, so it was 105, but felt like 112.
Yeah, it was
I
stupid.
was like, ouch,
I'm moving.
man.
I've been moving all day. Like I'm sweating still. And
I love
like
it.
my shirt's
I'm not
drenched from here
complaining, but
down.
wow.
The thing is, there's never like really one reason for anything, especially complicated economic models, right? There's like, I mean, it's complicated, but a lot of people understand it. I guess 2 points I would make to that is, I think we'd see a lot more, regardless of the other factors, pricing of the housing here. I think we'd see a lot more people still coming here if their 401ks weren't down 40% or their crypto holdings weren't down 75%, or like, and it's not just that the money's not there. Partially it's because the money's not there that they're planning on doing other things with. But the other part is like, there's so much uncertainty. Nobody really knows what to do about anything right now. Like what are we doing about anything? Like, I don't want to make, most people just do not want to make any life altering decisions because there's so much volatility, going on in the world, and even social volatility. Like you said, the overturning of Roe versus Wade, and shootings and school shootings, and like everybody just, I feel the general sense that I get is people just feel really uneasy right now. So I see a lot of people kind of dissociating from life completely and going on vacation or just sitting at home and like not making big decisions right now, which I think is affecting, the current housing market.
I've been out of the country every week for the last like 3 months, man, for that exact reason.
I'm getting ready to, for the first time in 4 years, I'm going to leave for 3 days, like next weekend. And then in August, I actually am going to go to a resort. Well, maybe I've got it planned, but I can always cancel it. But it's funny. The other thing I'll say really quick about that, just to plant the seed, is like we talked earlier about the rentals. Well, like BlackRock and all these other companies that bought 30% of the homes in Texas last year anyway, these guys, they act like they don't know what's happening. But the reality is these are the smartest economic and psychological minds in the world when it comes to marketing and money management and things like that. This is all planned. Like psychologically, they know that we're going to feel the way that we feel right now about this. And now we're all considering like, ooh, I don't know if I can buy anymore. Like, I guess I'm going to have to rent. That's what they wanted us to do. They wanted it to get to the point where they said, how expensive does the housing market need to be before the Joe average person says, you know what, I guess I just got to rent. And the reason I know that this is relevant is if you go listen to a YouTube podcast that Neil Bawa did, who's a real estate developer, really smart financial mind. It's cool because that podcast, he talks about the tokenization of real estate syndicate investing. And he also talks about build to rent being the hottest segment in development real estate right now, build to rent. And third, he actually talks about the hottest real estate markets in the country. And this was earlier this year. And he said, it's Austin. It's definitely Austin, and not really just Austin. He said his 4 main investing areas were Killeen, Fredericksburg, San Marcos, and maybe a bit of San Antonio. And then I think he'd mentioned one other, but I can't remember what it was. But they're doing this project in San Antonio where he said the sweet spot is this build to rent. And it's not necessarily multifamily. It is around 1,000 square feet, 2 to 3 bedroom, 4-plex buildings, because they're meant to be for a 6-figure, multi-6-figure earning family that knows that they don't want to spend $800,000 for a house, but they're actually willing to lease for $3 or $4 grand a month. And they'll sign like a 5-year lease because they just like, whatever, we don't care. So now the rentals are being built for that segment, not necessarily just the apartment segment, which is meant to be the $1,000 to $2,000 a month crowd. So I think that's telling.
Yeah, what's interesting is uneducated economist who we're having on Friday, plug again, 12 o'clock on Friday. He talked yesterday about an article that was from a few years ago, and it was talking about how we needed more inflation to drive some of these things and to put more money back into banks' pockets. And so they were talking about how to drive inflation, and then here we are with inflation at 9.1% today. I mean, they know what they're doing. They definitely know what they're doing. Ian, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm seeing so many of those neighborhoods pop up. It's like, you could live here, rent now. And they're all single family detached homes, and they're beautiful neighborhoods. I mean, they're master plan communities, but you walk in, you wouldn't know that you're not, not able to own it ever. Right. This is a reoccurring, like you said, build to rent. And it's, I think it's a little sad personally that that's happening so aggressively around here. Sad for first time buyers and people that are relocating here, trying to, save money or change their lifestyle or maybe improve their lifestyle versus investors. Investors are, I'm sure they're loving it.
What's the name of that podcast, Kevin?
I'm looking it up right now.
Okay. I like this while you're doing that. I like this comment right here. I don't see how you can drive down 2222 and see $2+ million homes, and all of them are paying 50 grand a year in property tax.
Easy.
How is possible? All these people are doing okay. Like, that's what drives me crazy about, like, when people vote for stuff in Austin or when they do stuff in Austin. West Austin has the highest property taxes. Like, even though their rate's low, they go, oh, the rate is so low. It's so low. It's terrible that they're only paying this amount of rate. But then their taxes are $100,000 a year. Like, people don't even make $100,000 a year.
You gotta look at, so obviously the rate is super low there. Prices are quite high there. But you have to think about how many of these homes people have already lived in for X number of years, and they've been capped with their homestead, right? I don't know that information, but a lot of these people, they've had their houses from the 80s, 90s, early 2000s before this huge surge. So they're not paying that in property taxes.
Right.
So that's really important. There's probably a larger majority that are not paying more than, I don't know the number. Let's say it's 15,000, 10,000 in property taxes based on what the prices were when they purchased the house.
And they're like 65 exempt capped.
And they're 65 and they have the homestead. And so you've got people that are buying brand new houses for 600,000 and they're paying 15,000 a year in property taxes because it's in a new neighborhood that has a mud in it and they didn't know better.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's why, I had a client earlier this year. They reached out to me in like March, and they're like, hey, we just closed. We've only had this home for 7 months. I know we're going to get hit with a short-term gain, but we think we want to move back to Houston because we saw our neighbor's tax bill. We weren't anticipating paying 15 grand in property tax is really going to hurt us. I'm like, look, here's your options. It's up to you if you want to sell, but here are all your options. And they ultimately sold. But I think that's really important too, is that like agents, I always say agents don't talk about taxes. I think it's because agents don't understand how the taxes work. And I don't think that's necessarily the agent's fault. Some, yes, are just like negligent, but they make it. I talk about the taxes constantly. Ian, you have people on your channel constantly about taxes, and it is still one of the most confusing things to talk about when it comes to property taxes in Austin. So they make it purposely confusing. So you end up paying a lot of money and they keep voting for crap that makes you pay more. And then they go, hey, by the way, we're going to build this railroad, and we're going to subsidize and make things affordable and take 300 million of your tax dollars to make things affordable by subsidizing. So what they do, exactly what Kevin just said, they take and they go and build a development. It's subsidized by our taxes so they can rent it for cheap to people instead of people being able to buy a house. Because look, let's be honest. There's a chart that I looked at the other day. It was like, if you bought a home and owned it for 30 years, how much equity you'd have at the end of that 30 years. After 10 years, it's like $150,000. Think about it. If you're a single person or whoever, and in 10 years, you have an extra 150 grand, that's like making an extra like 20 grand a year, right? So if you're making 50 grand a year, think about it, you're making 70 grand a year. And you go to sell that. And then after like 15 years, it was like 250,000. And then in 3 years, it's like just under $400,000. So I've been able to be successful and make money selling and buying homes, personal homes, not people's homes. And think about the people that can't afford that, because instead of making homes affordable that they can't afford, we just make these homes that are built to rent. And that keeps people, back to the BlackRock thing, it keeps people renting forever. And it drives me nuts that we are taking away advantages for people to actually grow wealth. Because let's be honest, real estate is one of the easiest ways actually to gain wealth. Go ahead, Ian.
Man, I saw a comment from John about how much people are putting down. You know, that's still a huge factor too when you're considering what people are paying monthly to live in their house. Because you know, if they had a nest egg, or if they pulled out of crypto or anything like that, or sold a house, uh, we still don't have access to that data here, right? Like it's private. It's possible to see, but it's mostly private. You can see their loan amount. I mean, I have people that are getting loans on $800,000 houses, and they're only getting a loan for 250,000, right? So that helps with their property taxes when they go to protest it in the future, right? Because they can finagle that a bit. So there are a lot of things that people can do to keep their property taxes lower. But if you're coming in blind, brand new construction, there's almost nothing that you can do to avoid such a huge tax burden.
Let me play devil's advocate here, because I am the devil in this case, because, you know, I'm responsible for the same stuff that I hate, right? Which is like developing land for highest and best use. The reality is highest and best use for this land is what is happening. So like, you can't be mad at a developer for looking at and being like, oh, maybe we should build $300,000 houses on this land that we could sell 9 condos for the same price, or for $9 million worth of condos for the same value of land. You know, it's just not going to happen. What's going to happen is going to be, it's the California model, where the reality is like, it's 10 years from now or 15 years from now that like Elgin and Jarrell will be these metro sleep bedroom communities of affordable homes. And that's where
they'll be the new Kyle and Buda.
Yeah. That's where you will buy a house. Like, listen, like, I'm not delusional in this. When I first started working and had an engineering degree and an MBA, my first house was like $82,000. My second house was only like $250,000, and that was like, I mean, we did well, and we were budgeted to the max at a $250,000 house at that time. So, you know, you got to say like, it's not sustainable for the cheapest house really in the area to be $400,000. It's just not. So you have no choice but the developers to look at these smaller communities that are 30, 40 an hour away from Austin and be like, hey, this is where we got to buy cheapest land and we can get the cheapest utilities and incentives. So this is where we're going to build the houses.
At Georgetown, they keep announcing that they're going to focus more on mixed use and higher density housing. Like that, it's just, it's kind of, you know, like you said, it's playing devil's advocate. You're like, I want my clients to win. I want to win. I don't want to pay that much more in property taxes as these developments come in. And I want my privacy. It's all sorts of conversations that are happening. You want people to be able to afford their homes. Yeah. That's what our job is to help people accomplish their real estate goals.
Yeah, I mean,
man. Everybody's got different goals though.
ABOR actually released that report that talked about the development fees, and the development fees for Austin versus the rest of the state are ridiculous. And the development fees like per unit in Austin relative to even other areas around Austin are like 4 times the cost. Like if you were to build 4 single family houses on 1 acre infill in Austin, there are $46,000 roughly in just fees, like subdivision fee and permits and tap fees, $46,000 per unit, which is ridiculously high. To give you an idea, Houston's is $5,000 per unit infill. So, I mean, they have to make more money off that.
Well, I mean, here's what's interesting. The city of Austin could, I understand it. They want tax revenue, right? So they could make it a hell of a easier and more, make more incentives for building more density and building single family homes. They could easily do that. They have so much available land that they could actually sell that they haven't. So I find it funny that the city that keeps talking about, we'll talk about ABOR, since you brought up ABOR, just put money behind a mayoral candidate, and I'm not happy about it. I think it's ridiculous, but it's the same old crap. They talk about wanting to make it affordable and talk about affordability being on their forefront, but do nothing about it. And then we keep voting for people that just continue to do nothing, and then we see the bullwhip effect right now. People are just getting frustrated and leaving. I got frustrated and left. You know, I've been here 10 years and I got frustrated and left. And then it was a multitude of things, but primarily the thing that drove me out was the schools. So Did you go ahead?
Well, I was just going to say, Aaron said they're not seeing condos in sale homes, and I'll tell you, like, a big reason why you guys generally will see less homes for sale from builders, unless they're massive production builders or on these, larger plots of subdivision land, is because if you really just look at the numbers from a development side, it really makes no sense for us to sell those units. It makes no sense, because then we have to take that money and pay capital gains tax on that, unless it was built in an opportunity zone. And if it was built in an opportunity zone, there's massive incentives to not sell those units, because it's untaxed income through going into the investment. So you're incentivized to hold those investments for quite a while, like 10 years basically or more. So like you're not probably going to see, you'll see few, if any, condos for sale in anywhere outside of Austin. You won't see it in Pflugerville or that. You might see attached townhomes, because they can be developed not like multifamily. They can be developed on single family lots, so they're less restrictive. So that's probably the only thing you'll see are single wall shared duplexes or maybe quadplex for sale.
Yeah.
Even those are few and far between. I've got a lot of people that reach out and they say, hey, I'm looking for a duplex or multifamily, 1 to 4 or more. And it's always an interesting conversation, because I'm thinking to myself, well, if you have that and you know that rents are increasing and you can get more per unit, how many people are looking to let that go unless they need that cash or need to leverage it for some other purchase? Or they're aging out of being an investor or something like that. There are a lot of people that want to hold on to it. There's no incentive for them to let it go.
Do you see prices dropping more than Cali in Texas? I don't know what you mean by that.
I think they're talking about, like, if you were to compare, are prices dropping 20% here and 10% there, or what's the ratio?
I think it's
I don't know
impossible.
anything about Cali.
I think it's impossible to say.
Yeah. As far as how much they're dropping, they're coming down. I mean, I speculated last week. What was our high? 664. I thought we were going to be coming down to probably 635 this month. So it's a $30,000 reduction for the June numbers, and I think the July numbers will probably be right around 610. So I mean, that's a $50,000 drop. So I think we'll be 50,000, maybe even come under that. Maybe we'll end the year probably 590.
I feel like 600 is sustainable.
Yeah.
I feel like 600 for a single family residence in Austin is sustainable. You have to look at income, the income of a dual income tech earner and the price to pay plus property taxes. It's very reasonable still to afford that.
And I think what you'll see, though, is what we've kind of talked about. Once we hit October again, a lot of this will shake out. A lot of this inventory will start to shake out. Who knows what rates will do? That guy that came on a week ago, that economist, said that they would come down. We'll talk to the uneducated economist on Friday and see what he says. But
at noon, right? At noon on Friday.
At noon, yeah, noon
Central
o'clock
time.
Central Time. Uneducated economist right here on Real Migos. So I have a question for you. One of the comments I just read was about builders, and they said basically they like seeing builders suffer right now. What is your sentiment on what's happening with builders?
I mean, the builders I've looked for a house, I still can't find anything. So I haven't got to experience, what you guys have experienced yet, but it may be just because of the neighborhoods I'm looking. So I don't know if I've seen them suffer much. They're still offering. I mean, one of my agents that's been working in New Braunfels, they're still offering her 1% commission. Lennar was offering 1% commission. Do you think they're struggling? I mean, they've always been doing that. They're greedy.
Well, Lennar came out and said they're really struggling. They're struggling in Austin, but they haven't done anything about it.
Why
are they still paying agents 1%?
Well, so they'll do that, but they'll still offer, $10,000 in incentives to the seller as well. Or to the buyer of the home. So before it was, they wouldn't pay agents, they wouldn't offer incentives, and they wouldn't let you pick anything, right? You wouldn't get to do any of it. Now it's starting to recede some. So I do think there is a little bit of suffering, but the suffering is such a weird word, right? Because I don't know if suffering, they might not have as high margins, right? That's different than suffering. I'm getting a lot, and we've talked about this week after week in the last probably month, 2 months, a lot of emails and calls from different builder reps inviting me to come out and do videos or
calling you.
Or they have these new realtor events, celebrations, luring us in with wine and cheese. And I mean, I like cheese, but just getting us to come and learn more about their community so that we can sell their houses for them, because it's no longer a situation where they can just put them on there, put one on there and get 10,000 leads. And that house isn't actually for sale, but they have others that they can get you to buy.
I think that was part of the problem. So we had so much demand and so little inventory that all these builders were putting out people on lists, right? And so if I had a buyer and there was 10 available communities that we would go on every single list. So if you have 70 people that go on 70 lists, you think that, or 10 lists, you think that is, every one of those builders thinks, oh, I have 70 people ready to buy. Or in reality, you probably have 15, 10, right? And so and what if those people go buy somewhere else? So I think that's why they started building the inventory homes versus building the homes, like continuing to try to finish the homes of people who are already under contract. One thing that's pretty interesting about the new construction is the fact that I'm seeing a lot of people start to back out of new construction. And somebody asked me to do a full video on this. I sat down with my team this week. We had a team meeting, and both my buyer agents have clients who are still 2 months away from closing, want to back out and renegotiate their deals. Have you seen buyers backing out of new construction and renegotiating or trying to renegotiate their deals?
I haven't seen that work out successfully, but that doesn't mean they can't go to an earlier phase in that same neighborhood and get a better deal for a very similar floor plan.
Yeah.
Right. You didn't hear that from me. I'm just saying, like, that's one of those, that's an option. If you're in the position where you're buying something and you're like, okay, I might lose an earnest deposit of $20,000, but I'm getting the same floor plan, 1 year old, still under warranty, and I'm paying $50,000 less. Right.
Yeah.
So that's a tough conversation to have with yourself.
Here's what I had the question I had with my agents on my team that were running into this problem. Well, not really a problem, just scenario, was that here's the thing, and here's how I told them to handle it with their clients is this. So let's say you have $5,000 in earnest money, and I actually put up a picture. Somebody had like $60,000 in earnest money, but they got a house for 120, like with incentives, like $120,000 difference. So they were still up $60,000, and people were like, "I can't believe you would like leave 60 grand on the table like that." But the way I look at it with some of my clients, and what I talked to my team is, if you have $5 grand in earnest money in a house, and we can go over close sooner, get a better interest rate, and you lose $5 grand, but we make, maybe we get 15 in incentives, you're still up $10,000. So do you want to do that? And the way it shakes out, a lot of people, they're 15% or something like 16% of people backing out of deals. Hell, on my listing, on my home, we have multiple offers way over list price and both backed out at the same exact time. So, right. But anyway, back to the builders is the fact that the builders, if you're a buyer, does that make sense? So where does that make sense? And if it does, then yeah, either go to the builder and say, hey, look, I found a better deal somewhere else. We're going to go, unless you either give me some of the incentives you're offering, some of these new builds, or maybe you just terminate. So I don't know if you're seeing that, but
I told you I had a builder do that to me, right? I was representing the listing, and the builder offered the buyers that were already going under contract with us. They were like, oh, we could beat that deal. I'm like, get out of here. Oh, it's hilarious.
Kevin, are we brothers?
No.
Well, that's perspective.
Somos bromigos.
We're bromigos, yeah. Joel says, I recall Jeremy mentioning last year when this squeeze started that it will eventually turn, and surely the pendulum is swinging back in the other way as the recession fears increase too. And I think that's what a lot of, I mean, like, look, if I could renegotiate a contract and get something lower right now, I would do it. If it's got to make sense though. Right?
Well, there's no harm in trying either.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, there is if the builder just terminates on you. But
Yeah,
I don't
right.
think terminate 6 months ago, they might have done that. I don't think they're going to do that
now. That's a really
now.
important point, right? Like if you're going back to the builder with another offer, remember that you're in a situation where they can just say, never mind, right? Like most builders have that escape clause, right?
Yeah.
So don't get too bold.
I mean, I just want to be clear that I don't work with nearly as many new build buyers as Ian and Jeremy do. So I don't have the best insight on that.
Yeah, I would say for me, it's about 50-50 new construction versus resale. And it's, it's interesting both ways. Especially when people are teetering back and forth. Well, do I get this or do I get that? And it's subtle changes between.
I just personally love, like, I've always said this for a long time. Like, I want my clients to buy real estate as close to the center of Austin as they possibly can. So I really don't care as much about subdivisions and amenities and tax rates and stuff like that. I love, Austin real estate.
Because you want to build to own or build to rent.
Yeah, but you're thinking, 100,000 feet or 50,000 feet. Yeah. A lot of people are thinking a little lower than that. Because they are concerned with their family in the moment. How long is it going to take for them to get to the store or in an emergency, get to the hospital? How long does it take for them to drop their kids off to school? If you're like at phase 10 in a master planned community, well, you're going to be way back there and say 10 minutes to get out of the neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah.
So would you build new or would you buy a resale that's 3 years old? 3 years newer or older and be closer to the amenity center, closer to the entrance of the community. It's stuff like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes larger, like the yard sizes change, build quality changes. It's all relative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think there's no one answer for anything. Like everything else, there's just no one clear-cut answer for anything. So I don't think every builder's struggling. I don't think every community is struggling. I think they're all just kind of one-off, need to be taken one at a time, because some builders planned better than this, right? Like they didn't get greedy.
Some builders, so the way builders work is interesting too, because some of them will buy all of the materials as early as they can. They'll have all of the permits done at once, and then they'll start building, so they can control their costs a little better. Others will get loans on everything and just hope it works out, and those are generally the ones that change the prices along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Well, I mean, let's be honest, like builders still have the most antiquated systems possible. And I think in the pandemic, a lot of them started going to that Tesla model. And I think they stopped after a while. So it'd be interesting to see if they go back to that Tesla model, or they can get to that Tesla model, right? Where basically you click a button, you have this, I mean, Milestone was that for a while, right? You had 3 options, you click the button on which one, and they built it. All right, I have a special guest joining us right now. Anthony Nguyen, who has been on the channel in the past. He is our resident tax guy. Anthony, how you doing?
Hey, Jeremy, Ian, Kevin, good to see you.
Hey, good to see you.
And you, man.
It's so, Anthony was on Ian's channel. He joined me a few weeks ago. So Anthony, the biggest burning question that I have when it comes to property taxes right now, and if you have property tax questions, start dropping them in the chat, because Anthony would be a very helpful resource for this. Anthony, is first of all, turn off your phone, man. Come on. This is Real Amigos. We're serious here. Just kidding. My burning question is, with prices coming down, how can people use that to their advantage to try to bring their property tax valuations down? Is that possible?
Well, right now, you can't do anything about it for right now. The property bill that you'll get in November is based on your valuation for January 1st of this year. and they use comparables from 2021. So the decline that we are seeing in the last couple months right now, you can use that next year, but you can't use it for the current valuation that you might be under protest, although on the 15th, TCAD will be certifying preliminary values, at least 95% to the taxing district. So your values will essentially be locked in. You should have already protested by last month. And while you might not have gotten your hearings just yet, they're working their way through to be able to settle at least 95% to be able to report to the taxing entities to set their tax rates. So trying to use the decline right now is not going to work for last year's valuation. Okay. But what you can do is actually protest your taxes, right? And this is something that people can get confused with. When you go to TCAD, you're protesting your property valuation, right? And that really doesn't affect your taxes as much as the tax rates that the cities, schools, county commissioners, ACC determine. And they will determine that after they get the values from TCAD. So July 15th is when preliminary or final certification of 95% will be given to them. And they'll be putting together their budgets in August. And then they'll have a public hearing that says, we're going to set our tax rate to this. And we all have the opportunity to go visit city councils, county commissioners' courts, school boards, and say, this is too much. I want you to lower it.
When does that happen again?
That will happen throughout August and September. So it's a little bit different. Each taxing entities have different laws. Some of them only have to have one public hearing. Some of them have to have two. But you can go to travistaxes.com, that website, look up your address or anybody's address, and it'll show you all the taxing districts that you will be paying into. They will post their proposed tax rates and they'll post their public hearing meetings. And those are the meetings that you're actually supposed to go to protest your taxes. That's where the final taxes are set with your property values already determined to them. And so that's your best opportunity to actually affect your taxes. In addition, in November, a number of school districts and cities might be having bond proposals. If you vote yes for a bond proposal, that is a tax increase. If you vote no, then you could potentially be lowering your taxes. So I know in my school district, I'm on the bond committee, and we'll be having a bond in Pflugerville ISD in November. And they will try to say that, well, we're not going to lower or increase the tax rate, but the tax rate is not the taxes that you pay. You don't pay 2%. You pay 2% times your home valuation. So when you vote for a bond, any bond, it will raise your taxes above what you ordinarily would normally be if you didn't vote that in. So any of those proposals, you can vote no. In addition, although it's very tough to go to city council meetings, school board meetings, and fight City Hall, right? They generally won't listen to you, but I've had minor successes with the city of Pflugerville in the past, and they would shave a half a penny here, half a penny there. But if enough people do come together and tell them, hey, we're getting taxed out of your house, they can adjust it. They have the final say with the taxes that you pay. It's really not TCAD. TCAD just really determines the proportion of taxes that you pay after the taxing units determine how much of the pie that you need to pay. So that's your final chances. So go to travistaxes.com, find out where those meetings are, attend them, and bring all your friends, because usually there'll be one or two people that ever show up to those meetings, where TCAD had 150,000 people protest their valuations, which really doesn't matter, because if everybody protested their valuation and cut it by 50% your values, well, the taxing entities would just increase the tax rates by 100% to get the same taxes as last year, because they're allowed to do that by law.
Go ahead, Ian. You had a question?
Yeah, I was going to say I heard some really important things there. One, if you vote for anything, whether it's a bond proposal that's hidden in a proposition or something like anything you're voting for, there is a potential that it can increase your property taxes if money is tied to it. So that's the first thing that's super important. The second thing is I heard that not enough people know or go through the trouble to protest their property taxes. Should more people consider doing that, there may be a long-term benefit of doing so. Right?
Yes. It is tough. You should start early in the process, like right now when they have preliminary budget meetings and they talk about it. But you're fighting a bureaucracy that will, and somebody just asked about tax revenue, they will try to raise the budget, the maximum allowed by law. So for cities and the counties, that's 3.5%, and school boards, well, that's just 2.5% for school boards. So they will try to maximize that as much as possible, and then they will try to issue bonds to borrow more money as much as they can without raising the tax rate. So they can come back to the public and go, well, we didn't raise the tax rate, we kept it the same. Well, if your values went up 20% and you're paying the same tax rate, you're paying 20% more. Even if you're homesteaded and you're capped at 10%, if they keep the same tax rate, you're paying 10% more. So they will try to play those games, and the tax system is kind of rigged to make it difficult for people to understand. And I heard you guys talking before. It is difficult for the average person to understand how it works. And all of these government entities have a way of communicating in such a way to make you think, oh, well, it's only X amount more, or we actually lowered the rate. So vote for this bond. We're lowering the tax rates. That's what they're doing in Pflugerville. I'm getting them to lower the school bond rate by 10 cents, but they still can issue $850 billion in bonds because our valuations went up 30%, right, across the board.
So I'm going to play mullet man here for a second and flip the coin and say, all right, there are a lot of people that are okay with their property tax increase if it's going to a good cause. For example, if your school ratings are X and you want them to be Y, maybe voting in favor of the property tax increase would be wise. What would you say in that situation for people that are voting either way?
Well, sure. If you feel that your government entities are spending your money wisely and you're getting the best bang for the buck, and you live in an affordable area and you can pay a little bit more, you have the right to do that. And that's the good thing about Texas is for any tax increase, for the most part, voters get to decide. And we're in Travis County. It's a very progressive county. They don't mind spending more money, but at some point it does become unaffordable. And when you ask all city council members, what are you running on? They all say, oh, it's unaffordable. I'm going to try to bring it down. Yet they continue to spend money to the maximum, raise bonds as much as they can, which only drives the cost of living up here. And they never have a solution for that. So we all know it's pretty unaffordable for the average worker here. And if you really want to lower it, you have to spend less. That's the bottom line. But if you feel like you're getting good value, then that's your choice to make. And, go for that. And generally, most bond proposals do pass in Travis County. What I will say is across Texas, though, 60% of school bonds actually have failed. But Texas has 254 counties. A lot of them are rural. They're generally more conservative, and they don't like to spend it. They like their low cost of living.
Where do you
cities, they pass them all. It's probably more like 80% in the big metropolitan areas. And so that's why we have the highest taxes in Austin.
But they wouldn't pass them anyway because they're getting our school district money regardless, right? With Recapture.
Yes.
They have no incentive. They have no incentive to do that because they know they're going to get money. If they're a rural school district, they're like, well, we're going to get Austin's school district dollars anyway. Why do we care? They're going to get it through Recapture.
They will get it for their M&O funding, right? But for debt, if they want to build something new, they usually have to issue that. That doesn't come to them. But that's what Recapture is. It takes from the rich areas like Austin and give it to all those poor areas across the state. But the funding per student is relatively equal, right? Every student gets about $10,000 in the state of Texas, but the rural areas, they don't have the property values to collect that. So they have to take it from somewhere. And so they take it from the rich ISDs like Austin ISD, Eanes ISD, Round Rock ISD, and actually now Pflugerville is in recapture. We're going to be getting zero from the state and starting to contribute to the state recapture fund because our values are $500,000. It's crazy how much our values have increased.
Yeah, it's sad because I feel like what you said is exactly what I'm seeing with a lot of clients, that the more we vote for some of the stuff, or we don't go and try to protest how much they're going to increase on the across the board, it starts becoming unaffordable. And so the whole kind of thing we've talked about today is the whole theme today is Austin overvalued, and you can partly say it's overvalued by how much we pay in taxes and what we get for those tax dollars.
Well, Austin has always been the most expensive city in Texas, period. And it's a function that we are the government center. We have UT, we have all these government workers. They get their salaries by taxpayers, so they're always going to vote for more government because that's what they get paid. So Austin is a little bit of an outlier, but it is the most expensive place. You can move anywhere else in Texas and probably get a bigger home for less money than the average price in Austin. But the market is turning, as you guys indicated, with rising rates. People aren't able to finance as much, and so prices are coming down. You are seeing it with the builders. I know the builders here they're not lowering their prices just yet, but they're actually paying realtors 7%, 12%. I've seen. So they don't want to lower the prices. They'd rather keep the prices high and give it to a realtor to try to find a buyer.
Where are you seeing 10, 12%?
Yeah, I haven't seen that. How you search?
I've seen 5% at most. But
Yeah, I've seen 6,
10 or 12%.
I'll send it to you.
Send it to me so Kevin can take some clients to build finally.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that's just going back to what we were talking about earlier with the builders. Are they struggling? I mean, when they're starting to pay realtors double and sometimes triple what they were originally going to pay them, that means something. I'm not going to say what it means, but it does mean something.
Yeah. Well, they used to have 100 people on their waiting list, and I'm hearing it's gone. There is no waiting list. If you want a new build,
they never had a waiting list. Come on. They had a spreadsheet somewhere, and they're like, "This is too much work. We'll deal with it."
They had ghost buyers, is what they had.
Mm-hmm. And lumber
Phantom
prices.
buyers.
If you haven't seen, lumber prices are down 50%. So
Great segue. Uneducated economist who knows everything about lumber futures is coming on Friday at noon, and that's one thing he loves to talk about is what happens with. He actually said he had a big announcement what was going to happen, I think is what he said, for lumber. So lumber prices might be going back up, or they might be going down. I don't know. But we're going to leave it there. I appreciate you, Anthony. Thanks for coming on. Sure. I am in the middle of moving and packing, so I appreciate it. New camera looks good. Face looks good. Kevin, appreciate you, man.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy. Always a pleasure.
If you want Kevin back, hit in the comments, bring Kevin back so we can, bring back our third Migo. So, all right, everybody, we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks, Anthony. Appreciate you.